Hello and welcome to the first CTIS walk-in clinic. My name is Roxana Spulber and I'm the Change Management Officer working for EMA. I will introduce the concept of the walk-in clinics and some key metrics for the CTIS public website. I will also get through a few housekeeping rules before introducing the CTIS experts that will be present today. The CTIS walk-in clinics are short, regular events that provide an opportunity for CTIS sponsors to consult EMA's CTIS experts and ask them questions about CTIS functionalities in a live forum. CTIS public website has been live since the 31st of January 2022. As of 13th of March 2022, there have been 6,369 logins to CTIS, 221 draft applications, and 14 submitted applications. For more information on CTIS, you can consult various resources, some of which are listed on this slide. The CTIS newsletter that provides key updates on the development of CTIS, the CTIS newsflash containing short updates on system usage, key facts and figures, the clinical trial information system training and support page containing training and supporting material, and for guidance on the CTR interpretation, you can log into UDRALEX Volume 10 Clinical Trials Guidelines. If we go to the next slide, you will see some housekeeping rules. We will be using Slido today to collect questions. Here is how to use Slido. Go to slido.com and enter the code that you see on the screen, which is hashtag 639936, or scan the QR code on the screen. You can ask questions there and give a thumbs up to the questions you want to see answered. We will answer the most popular questions first, so please ensure to use the thumb up feature. Please keep the questions focused on CTIS functionalities. If the video screen is blurry or otherwise difficult to see, please read the instructions in the box underneath the video on the event page. There you can find a link to watch the live broadcast in full screen. In full screen mode, you can increase the video quality by clicking the HD button on the bottom right of the screen and choosing 720p or 1080p setting. I would like now to introduce our experts. So we have Ana Rodriguez Sanchez Beato, that is our CTIS Deputy Program Manager and has been involved in the implementation of the Clinical Trials Regulation and the development of CTIS, providing a business perspective. And Noémie Manon, Principal Scientific Administrator and leader of the operation workstream for the Clinical Trial Information System, enabling the application of the Clinical Trial Regulation. I am now handing it over to our experts for the Q&A. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So we are now, we'll have the questions being shown on the screen here in a few seconds. And obviously questions are probably coming in slowly as the session has now started.
Yes, we are waiting for the questions to show. As I mentioned, go on slido.com, use the code that you see on the screen or scan the QR code and ask your question. Thank you. Okay, we have 3 questions on the screen. I think Noemi, and now we can start to take the questions.
Perhaps,
Right.
Noemi, if you allow me, can I start with the first one?
Please, yes, Anna, please.
Okay, so I will read the question. Could you please show where to select in CTIS the trial-centric versus organization-centric approach? So just to clarify that this is an automatic process, so there is no in the system any option, okay, I go through the city-centric, I click here, or I go through the organization-centric and I go there, click there. So no, that's not the case. This is an automatic process, and this is dependent on the registration of an sponsor administrator in our EMA account management system. So what it happens is if you as a user goes to the system and try to create a trial, the first thing you have to do is to enter the title of the trial, and then you need to select the sponsor organization. So you select an sponsor organization, the system will check in the back end if that sponsor organization has registered an sponsor administrator or not. If it has registered an sponsor administrator, then you will not be able to proceed because you need to be assigned with the role of CT admin scope specific trial by the sponsor admin of that sponsor organization that you have selected. However, if the system checks that in the back end that the sponsor organization you have selected does not have an sponsor administrator, then you can proceed and you can create your clinical trial application via the city-centric. So it's an automatic checking that by the system, and it will depend on whether or not you have registered an sponsor administrator or not in our EMA account management system.
Very good. Thank you very much, Anna. So I will then take the next question. And the one that currently is on top of the screen that we see here is EMA announced that the guidance or reduction. I think that's what it was. It's about the reduction guidance that the EMA is working on. So this guidance currently was, I think it's been announced that it would be available by Q1, and I think in fact this guidance has been reviewed internally and it will be published early April, and it will be published for public consultation early April. So in fact, this guidance will not be published as is and as endorsed, and you will have the opportunity to review it, to look at it and comment on it. So maybe we could take the next question, and I think that's the one at the top. Anna, would you like to take that question? I cannot hear you, Anna. I think you
So
might be
sorry,
muted.
Noemi, you allow me, I'm going to take the second one. Do clinical trial sites need to be maintained in OMS in order to retrieve them in CTIS? So just to explain, at this moment, the system by design, there are two options. So obviously the one we always encourage is that please, if you plan to create, to draft a clinical trial application, ensure that your sites are registered in OMS, and more in particular, those sites that are more often used. So there is the possibility that you go to OMS and register those sites. Alternatively, in the design of the system, we have also the possibility that if you did not register those directly in OMS, you can do that. You can submit the registration to OMS via CTIS. This is an alternative that we envisage in the design of the system. However, I would like to highlight that at this moment, some issues has been reported in the production version, and therefore, if you are planning to create a clinical trial application, please, it's better that you try to register those in OMS until this issue has been solved and properly communicated. So, but you have, by design, there are these two options, or you go directly to OMS, which is separated from CTIS, or you register via Ctis, the organization, which, as I mentioned to you, some incidents has been already reported on this particular point, and therefore, and we have always encouraged you to go to OMS in the first place possible, especially if you think that those sites has often been used in your clinical trial applications.
So the next question that we see on the screen here is about transitional trials. So transitional trials are trials that are already started and that are currently being authorized according to the Clinical Trial Directive. Those trials, there is a possibility to transition them to CTAS. So obviously those trials have already started. So how can the sponsor record the information as they should in the clinical trial application, and what can they do in order to inform on the start date of the trial in the clinical trial application form? I'm afraid today the anticipated start date, which is a field that is currently in the part 1, currently this field will not is only possible to be populated with what we call a date in the future. And I'm afraid currently, Roxana, we can't see the question anymore. So if you wouldn't mind maybe putting the question back on. And just to come back on the question, which was, is it possible to enter a date that is in the past? So currently, this is not possible. And I'm afraid this is not possible for the anticipated start date in the CTA application. So what we are suggesting to the sponsors at this point in time is just to provide a date, obviously that is in the future. But what I would like to reassure everyone that obviously once the transitional trial is in fact endorsed, authorized, approved in CTAS, then by that time, when the sponsor wants to indicate the start date with a notification, at this point in time, it is possible to enter a date in the past. So it is correct that in the CTA, this anticipated start date is not accurate, and we actually have this is a non-issue, and we will actually do an improvement in the system in the future. But to be fair, you are able to still provide a proper notification of start, and that start is in the past, just to clarify. Thank you.
Noemi, for the next question, once the product is registered in the medicinal product dictionary, why CTIS is not pushing strengths and pharmaceutical form? Can you perhaps provide an answer to this one?
Yes, certainly, Anna. So for this question, we have to maybe reflect that this is only valid for non-authorized product. Okay, so when the sponsor is registering their non-authorized product in the medicinal product dictionary, at that point in time, they will obviously provide all the required information, including the strengths and the pharmaceutical form. However, when the information is captured in CTIS, it is obviously, let's say, searched and selected from the medicinal product dictionary. The strengths and the forms are actually not immediately visible to the sponsor. That information will only be visible once the application has actually been submitted to the member state. This is by design, and the reason why this approach was chosen in collaboration with the sponsors that were advising, as well as the member states who were helping us to design this specific functionality, was to restrict any confidential information for when the information is indeed submitted to the member state. And as we know, strengths and pharmaceutical forms are considered sensitive information when the application is being drafted. So that is the reason why. Thank you. So I think we've got another question on the transitional trial, Anna, would you like to take the question? This is about
I will read it. I will read it first. For a transitional study, is it required to provide? Sorry, because now has moved. Is it required to provide the site-specific documents in the new formats with the occasion of the next substantial modification, or only if the respective document has been updated, change of PIs and sites? So I think, although I have to say that this question is not, let's say, CTIS specific, and for the reason, our recommendation is always you look at the Q&A that has been published by the Commission that provide more details on this type of question. If I am correct, when you transition a trial, you have to provide obviously the information that was provided in the context of this application when it was submitted under the directive. And as you know, there could be some certain information that is not expected to be provided because it was not a requirement at that time. But it's understanding that at the time of the first substantial modification, you are expected to provide the data that was missing at the time of the submission of the application. And my understanding is, in relation to this question, is that is at the occasion of the next substantial modification. But in any case, again, please look at the Q&A from the Commission, because here you have a lot of explanations in relation to this type of questions.
Thank you, Anna. So I think the next question is about OMS. So I think what I would like to suggest is that we concentrate on any CTIS functionalities for the OMS processes. I think there's a lot of information on the website, and if needed, we can have a distinct question and answer on that point. And I think our OMS colleagues are actually already hosting quite a lot of Q&A on this topic. So we'll move to the next one, which is about how can we upload a revised Part 2 document, ICF, to the CTA dossier when a sponsor receives an RFI only to Part 1 during an initial CTA assessment, as long as Part 2 is locked for editing. So this is quite a good question, because I think it goes back to how the regulation is actually organizing the assessment. We understand that obviously during validation, Part 2 and Part 1 documents can be, let's say, updated if necessary. But when there is a specific Part 1 assessment, obviously the sponsor will not be able to amend any documentation related to Part 2, and vice versa. And this is obviously the case as well for Part 2 assessment. So in such a case, and I think there might be some some age cases that may have an impact on informed consent, for instance, as it says in this particular question. I think in such a case, obviously, there needs to be a liaison with the member state, and you need to understand whether the changes that have been proposed in the protocol may have an impact on the ICF. And I think in such a case, you need to liaise directly with the member state on this particular point.
I think I will take the question at the bottom of the screen. Can CTA admin role view the IMPD quality if this is uploaded by the IMPD role, or only the IMPD quality that was uploaded by CT admin? Related question: if there are two IMPD roles, to pharma companies, can they see each other's uploaded IMPD quality? Well, just to clarify, the city admin is, let's say, a super role, because on top of being an administrator of users, they can perform all the business activities in the system, with the only exception is the submission of the ASR, which has for that need on top to have the ASR submission role. So this means that the city admin for sure can view the IMPD quality, can upload the IMPD quality. And if regarding the second point, if there are two IMPD roles, yes, they can see each other IMPD quality document uploaded. So that is the case. So there is no segregation between these two users. So if I upload the quality IMPD and Noemi uploads in another product the IMPD quality IMPD, both can view each other. So that's the case at this moment.
Okay, so the next question that we see on the screen, the one at the top, when a trial protocol is updated, the ICF has to be updated. I think this is related to the previous question to which I've responded. There might be cases where change to the ICF might be required even during the part 1 assessment. So in such a case, all I can say is you have to liaise with the member state. You have, when you respond to your to the queries that were provided by the member state to the assessment of the part 1, then you need to understand the mechanism to change the ICF that are probably in currently in the part 2. That's the only suggestion that I can make at this point in time. Then we have another question on the transitional trial. So Anna, shall I read the question and then if you would like to answer it?
Yeah.
So to regard to the transitional trials, how to submit any supporting documents which are newly added as per the CTR. As per guidance, it is saying that blank document could be added. Please elaborate on this particular requirement.
I think I mentioned this previously in another question. So when you submit as a transition trial, so the first submission to transition that trial, you will provide the documentation that was required in the context of the clinical trial directive and the one that is requested in the context of the clinical trial regulation, but that was not applicable in the context of the directive. Then you will upload for sure a blank document where you will indicate that this was not applicable for this particular trial. However, at the time of the submission of the first substantial modification, is there when you are expected, according to the Q&A for the Commission, if I'm not wrong, and that's why it's very important that you refer to that document, is when you are expected to provide the documents that are required in the context of the clinical trial regulation according to the annexes of that legal test. So that is how it works. So in the initial one, when you transition, yes, probably there will be placeholder where you will need to attach a blank document, but when you submit the next application, so a substantial modification or additional member state, I don't know, then you are obliged according to the Q&A to provide the other documents that are now required in the context of the clinical trial regulation. But again, please refer to the Q&A from the Commission because again, this is more clarified in that document.
Okay, so then the next question that we have here is that if the organization is using organization-centric approach, does the high-level admin need to approve when another sponsor is adding the organization as trial site?
Okay,
So, yeah, so
do you
please,
want me
Anna,
to address this one as I'm in my area of
please go ahead.
expertise? Okay, just to clarify, as I explained previously, in order to be able to create a clinical trial application via the organization-centric approach, the user is required to be a CT admin with a scope all trials. So, and obviously the sponsor admin should have been assigned these roles to that particular user. And then only in that case, if that user has the CT admin role with the scope all trials, will be able to create the clinical trial application in the system. So this is how it works. So as I explained before, if you select a sponsor, an organization that has a sponsor admin register, you will not able to proceed unless you have been already assigned with this CT admin role with the scope all trials previously.
Okay, I think, Anna, the question is, does the high, can we go back to the question? Because I think the question was about adding an organization as a trial site. So I think we can probably answer that yes, it's possible, but you don't need in CTIS, you don't need a particular approval to do so. I mean, it's up to you if you want to use another organization that is known and for which you can actually access, search and select. If indeed it is a trial site, then you can do so. There is no approval within CTIS to do that. I think we can clarify probably it's
No, no.
such
I
way, huh?
think just to clarify to add trial sites, what you know is to have the right role. So and that's what you need. The user need to have the right role to be assigned, and obviously this role need to be affiliated to the sponsor organization that is responsible for that trial.
Very good. So then the next question is about the fact that currently in CTIS, the upload there is an upload mechanism that enables the sponsor to upload files of 50 megabytes. In fact, today it's 10 megabytes. Let's be clear about it. So the 10 megabytes functionality is in existence today for any upload of any documents and not just for the SUR. So there is a scope for improvement and we're currently working on this. I don't think here in the question you're asking us whether we can give you do you know when the size limit will be increased? So all I can say at this point in time is that we are working to increase this limit from 10 megabytes to 50 megabytes. The timing of when this will be available to you is not yet known, at least by myself, and I don't think, Anna, we can provide any clarity on this today, but this is important that we are very much aware of this requirement and we are working to actually increase the size.
Okay. Perhaps I can take the first one now. Could you please comment on the reliability of the CTIS OMS link? We have experienced number of occasions when this link seems to be broken. It was not possible to search for organization from CTIS. I think, again, I mentioned this previously, that we know, as I said before, there is the option for sites to be registered directly in OMS, and also by design we have the option to register those sites in OMS via CTIS, and we receive some incidents in relation to this issue, which we are investigating and trying to give a solution. So we are aware of this issue, and we are working on it, and probably once this is addressed, we will communicate it, so you know what is the final decision on this and how it will work in the future.
So the next question that I see on the screen here is what is the procedure to add a co-sponsor? So there is a functionality within CTAS that enables the sponsor or obviously sponsor user to indicate whether this clinical trial application is to be conducted with co-sponsors. So there is such a way, such functionality to add a co-sponsor. The co-sponsor then needs to be specified as an organization. So obviously for this, you will have the ability to search OMS to call out the actual co-sponsor that you want to add to this clinical trial application. I think it's an interesting functionality because then you can further define what are the responsibilities of each each sponsor. So currently it's in place and it is available. The next question is on deferral. Would you like to take that question, Anna?
Yes, I will read it. How will the deferrals be evaluated in the CTIS system? Will a member state check both trial category and evaluate the deferral request, or just the trial category? Well, I have to say that this is a difficult question for Noemi and me, in the sense that we are not a assessor. It's a pity that we don't have in the panel someone from the member state that probably it will be in a better position to answer this question. I mean, I will presume that they will check all information available to decide if the deferral that has been requested is adequate or not. So you can that's what I would expect if I was in your boots. So that's the answer I can give at this stage. So because, as I say, I'm not an assessor, but I would expect that they will check all the information available to do a proper decision.
So the next question that I see there is in relation to a previous question that I think I personally responded. This is when there are changes to the part one that may impact the part two, and that was the question about if the sponsor does an update to the protocol, how does that reflect on the informed consent form that is obviously at the moment placed in part two. So I suggested that the sponsors should reflect on this with the member states. I think the best way is to actually use the RFI response and collaborate with the member state and understand how the changes that have been proposed will impact the informed consent and how can this be done. What we need to think is the part one and the part two assessment are running in parallel. So if such a thing occurs, obviously we can always hope for the changes to be done in the part two. But then if it is not done at this point in time of this particular assessment, maybe the member state then will suggest another way. And this is why you would need to liaise with them directly on this particular point.
Okay, I can take the second question. Will EMEA provide a template for compliance with 2016-769? I have to say that we are aware that the Commission may prepare a template in relation to this, but obviously at this moment it's not ready yet. And probably it will not be ready in the next upcoming months as they have other priorities. But I think they have it in mind to prepare a template, but not available yet.
So the next question is about the lay summary. So lay summary of the protocol. Should we submit two summaries of the protocol? A lay people version and one scientific version. The translation rules, so Annex 2 of the Q&A of the EC, are the same for both summaries. Right.
Perhaps here for this, Noemi, if I remember well, in the Q&A, they advise for the summary of the protocol. It's possible to be in lay person summary, to be in a lay language, let's say, if possible. But it's a recommendation, obviously, so we it's left to you to decide. But it's recommended to do it in a lay language, because the summary of the protocol is more intended for the public that may check, okay, what is this about, and therefore that's why if it's in a lay language it will be better understood. Obviously, the full protocol will provide all the scientific details, and therefore that's why I think the recommendation from the Commission in the Q&A, as far as I understand, is to provide it in a lay language if possible.
So we can certainly check this, but there are recommendations to write the synopsis in a lay person way, and that's very true. That's covered there. But I don't think there is any request to have a synopsis written in a scientific way. So I suggest we verify this particular point here. Because I'm not aware of two synopses, let's say, required. Currently,
No.
currently CTIS will require you to upload a protocol. If the protocol already includes a synopsis, then you would not need to provide the synopsis as such because it's already part of the protocol. But in CTIS, you certainly have also a placeholder for the synopsis. And the
Yes.
synopsis, in order to prepare that synopsis, please refer to the Q&A where it's stipulated that it should be prepared in a layperson's way, for sure.
Anna Noemi, maybe you can take the.
Anna, would you like to take that question?
I'm not sure for this if I can answer at this moment. I would need to check. I don't know,
Okay,
Noemi.
so
If you...
let's read the question. So the GMP documentation in the past, we included all the authorization of all manufactured and importers. So this is the MIA that are part of the drug product production. We wonder if the new CTR, we can just include the release site documentation. So in CTIS, you currently have several placeholders for the GMP documentation. I think what we need to understand is that it really depends of your product. If the product is already authorized, you're not going to necessarily going to need to provide a lot of GMP documentation. And I think what I suggest you do then is to refer to the Annex 1 for sure, but also the quality, the Q&A that are available on the Commission website on the GMP documentation.
Thank you.
Okay. I will take this one. In the serious breach notification and third country inspectorate inspection notification, the sites outside EA should also be included. To the site outside EA will register themselves in OMS. Currently, as per the design, that is the case. However, as we have identified this issue with interface with OMS, and we know that there has been concerns from stakeholders about the difficulties to get the documentation required by OMS to validate this information, we made in a short future to switch off this possibility. But at this moment, by design, this is the case. So via CTIS, you will can register the organization and submit it to OMS, or alternatively, you can go outside directly in OMS and register the organization. But perhaps in this case of serious breaches and third country sites, we plan in the future probably to switch off this possibility, and these sites will be kept just in CTIS, so to reduce the burden to the stakeholders.
So the next question is, why is it not possible to upload documents with a dot in the file name, like protocol version 1.0? So this would help to follow up on the versions in our own documentation. If not, it's not helpful to name the version in CTIS only. So I must say on this particular one, I know there are some convention in the naming of the way the document is labeled, the title of the document, that's how we refer to. Now, I don't recall what are exactly the rules, but certainly we can certainly go back and check on that particular one. So if Roxana, we could make a note on this to make sure that we're very much helping our community on this particular naming
Sure
of
thing.
the file. Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you, Noemi. Okay. Moving on to the next one.
Perhaps I can take this one and the next one. In the organization, the first one, in the organization centric approach, how can a third party providing the IMPDQ ensure that the sponsor does not have access to the document? The sponsor can easily assign the quality IMPD viewer role to themselves. So, and yes, that is the case, and therefore this need to be addressed by contractual arrangement, and to ensure that users are bounded by confidentiality. So this is something that the system will not address, or at least at this moment, how is it designed? And then with regards to the next one, the EU trial number is generated in CTIS, correct? how can the EU trial number then be added to the protocol, which is a requirement? I think the approach here is similar to what you have in UDRA-CT. Bear in mind that the first, when you, let's say, when you create a clinical trial application, there are, let's say, like two steps. One is initiate the application, which means to generate the EU number. And then later you can start drafting the application and preparing all the different sections of the application. So then you can proceed in the same way. So you can initiate the application, meaning generate the EU number in the system, with then you can place it in your protocol, and then later when you have done that, you can start drafting the clinical trial application.
So the next question is, will there be a template for financial arrangements? So that's in the part 2 regarding compensation of investigator trial sites. I've seen one for subjects. So if there are any templates that will be provided to as guidance by the European Commission, these will be published on the European Commission website. So I suggest you actually monitor that site. I'm personally not aware of a financial arrangement template, but then what I would say is that do keep on monitoring that site. Huh?
The next one, um, quality IMPD other org, quality IMPD submitter can be assigned in CTIS per trial, not per product. Both CT admin and also other. No, sorry, I want to read the first one. Sorry, I was making a mistake because they are related. Quality IMPD. Sorry, I want to take the second one that I think
The
was.
second one, okay.
Sorry, IMPD quality. Other organization. Will authority submit separate RFI for quality IMPD of IMP1 to only quality IMPD submitter of IMP1 at other company, and separate RFI to quality IMPD submitted by a sponsor to safeguard confidentiality? As I said, no, by design, if everyone that has the quality IMPD role will be able to view quality IMPD related considerations linked to an RFI. So there is no discrimination at this moment. So bear that in mind. Again, this needs to be addressed via confidentiality arrangements, contractual arrangement and ensure user are bounded by confidentiality.
So the next question is, will EMA provide guidance for PDF specification requirements for submission documents provided for application in CTIS? So for example, navigational requirement, text copying, etc. So I think the when you talk about, or in the requester's question here, it talks about PDF specification requirements. So I think we've actually explained, and this is currently available in the sponsor handbook. We have the what are required in terms of document upload. So I think this is already there and available to yourself. Now, in terms of navigational requirements, test copying, I think initially we had wanted to have a specific type of PDF. It was PDF A, but I think we've moved away from this specific requirement, and I think today it just says PDF. So I think that should simplify the requirement for the sponsor users. Huh?
Okay, I will take the next question, which I think I have already answered, but again, to remind you, here is quality IMPD submitter can be assigned in CTIS per trial, not per product. Both CT admin and also their QIMPD submitter can view quality IMPDs, correct? So the answer is yes. How to respond to RFI for quality IMPD, only for authority to see. Confidentiality, so it's the same. So as I explained before, CT admin and quality IMPD, who the user that have been assigned with these roles will be able to view all the information related to the quality of the IMPD, including the RFIs that have been submitted by the member states. So this is currently the design in the system. We know that this issue has been raised in the past, and perhaps in the future there will be an improvement, but based on the prioritization we have to do on other requirements that once are desirable to be implemented in the system, but at this moment is what it is, and perhaps in the future there will be some improvement in this area.
So the next question that we have here at the top is regarding the co-sponsorship. Should the co-sponsor be added to the first page by means of add button? So I think just to explain then how to add a co-sponsor, so the sponsor user should navigate to the sponsor section in the part 1. And in the part 1 there are different sections, and in fact there is a way to, once you've unlocked the part 1 sponsor section, the sponsor user can actually add a co-sponsor. So there is an add button. So what is it exactly? I cannot recall whether it's definitely add. I cannot recall exactly, but I would need to look into the system to really answer exactly what sort of button it is. But it's not called, it's called add sponsor, as simple as that. Huh? And this is in the sponsor section. Okay.
Okay, so we have now the question: the EU city number needs to be added on certain documents. In case of a resubmission, the last 2 digits are incremented. Is the sponsor expected to update all the documents with this new number? Again, probably this is a question better for member states on what are their expectations. So here I can give you more my personal view, but I think the reason why we reuse the number and we extend it to these 2 digits is precisely to reduce the workload from your site. So I presume it could be acceptable not to have these 2 digits added in the revision of the protocol. Perhaps if the opportunity you have a substantial modification, perhaps you can indicate in an annex that it's this is related to a resubmission or something like that. But again, I mean, this is a personal view. I think probably this is a question that is more for colleagues in competent authorities to reply what is this view on this particular point. I'm not sure, Noemi, you want to comment if you have attended other sessions where this similar question has been raised, and what was the answer given by member states on this?
I think, as you said, it's more for member states, but certainly the functionality of the system was there to ensure that the trial number was retained. The last 2 digits are just there to indicate that it's a resubmission. So, as Anna was saying, I think you can certainly reuse the UCT number. You have a very good reason for it. It's a resubmission, as we said. So I think you should be fine to reuse that number. Yeah.
Noemi, Anna, we are close to the end of this event, so we still have time for 1-2 more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Oksana. So I think the next question that I see there on the screen is about the sandbox, and as I know there's been a lot of interest with accessing the training environment, and I would like to reassure our sponsor community that we're trying to do our best to open up the training environment wider to more users. What I would say at this point in time is that if you have a particular request, please send a query to us and we will evaluate it. Thank you. Anna, would you like to take the
Yes.
last question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So in the third country inspectorate inspection notification, do we have to provide information only for those inspections where a report is available? Precisely, the requirement of the legislation is that you provide the third country inspection reports. So if they are not available, then you cannot provide it. So you have to wait when you receive that report is when then you need to submit it. If I understood this question correctly.
Yes, very good, Anna. Thank you very much. And I think just to complement the previous question that was asked about the training environment, we currently have a survey that is open, to which you should probably go to that survey and answer the questions, because it would certainly help us to think about the next step in terms of providing access to the training environment. And the survey is currently available, I believe, on the EMA website. And if we have the link, maybe Roxana, we can. Yes, thank you, Roxana.
Yeah, the link is also available in the March highlight newsletter that we sent out, so it can be found there as well. We still have time for one more question, Anna and Noemi, if you want.
Okay, so the next question that we see at the top there is in the part 1 sponsor section in CTS, you cannot select a contact point for union that is outside the EU. I think this is a technical issue, but how can we sort this out in our submission until this issue is resolved? I actually don't think it's a technical issue. I think it's very clear that the requirement is to have a contact for the union in the EU. And I believe this is one of the it's the design of the system. So if you have questions or queries about this specific request, you have to let us know, but currently it is by design. Huh?
And probably also this is clarifying the Q&A from the Commission. So my advice is that you refer to that document as well.
Okay, so that concludes the Q&A session. I will stop sharing Slido and reshare the presentation for closing remarks. Okay, so thank you for attending the CTIS walk-in clinic. The post-event survey is now open and you can share your satisfaction with the event. You can find it on the event page under the post-event survey section. Also, a recording of this event will be available on the EMA website following the event. Please sign up for the newsletter for information on when the videos are available. The questions will be used as input to EMA training and support materials. We would also like to remind you of some of the next events hosted by EMA on CTIS. On April 4th and April 22nd are the next sessions for the CTIS walk-in clinics. Details on the EMA events page. And on April 28th is the next bite-sized talk on modifications on the clinical trial application. We hope you enjoyed this CTIS walk-in clinic and looking forward to hearing from you in the post-event survey. I will now give the floor to our wonderful experts for parting remarks.
So thank you very much, Roxana. So we look forward to your feedback. I think this is an initiative on those walk-in clinic that has just started. So please let us know your any way of how we can improve this. And obviously we look forward to your feedback. Have a wonderful end of the day. Bye-bye.
Yes, from my side is the same. I hope you found useful this session. It has been the first experience for all of us, even for Noemi and me, and therefore your feedback is very useful to ensure that we can improve the sessions. Thank you.